The skies were dark over a village in Burkina Faso. Mothers were crying. Children were running. Men were gone. The land was silent, but not in peace. It was silent because terror had come. Motorbikes came with men holding guns. These men were not soldiers. They were not heroes. They were terrorists. They burned homes. They killed fathers. They chased people from their land. Africa was bleeding. Not just Burkina Faso. From Mali to Niger. From Chad to Sudan. The people were suffering. But nobody was coming to save them. And then, a young captain stepped forward. His name was Ibrahim Traoré. And he said, "If no one will save us, then we will save ourselves. Not just Burkina Faso. All of Africa." The room was cold, but it wasn't because of the air. It was because of the tension. Presidents from all over West Africa sat in one place. They wore clean suits, expensive watches, shiny shoes. Their faces were serious, but their words were political. They talked, but not from the heart. At the front, one man sat differently. He didn't wear a suit. He wore army green. Simple boots. No gold watch. No smile. He was young, strong, focused. His name was Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. The youngest president in Africa. Only 34 years old. He had come not for games. Not for handshakes. He came for his people. The people of Burkina Faso, a country fighting daily for peace, food, and freedom. The meeting was about military takeovers. About how young soldiers had taken control in some countries. Presidents were angry. They were scared. They wanted to send a warning. One by one, they talked. But then the president of Nigeria stood up. His name was Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Tinubu was the leader of the biggest country in West Africa. A country full of oil, power, and politics. He looked around the room, then stared at Traoré. His words were sharp. "We cannot let these boys run wild. This is not how Africa moves forward. Soldiers are not presidents. We must stop this nonsense. If they don't listen, they will face the force of our hands." Some presidents nodded. Some clapped. But many looked at Traoré. He didn't blink. He didn't frown. He didn't raise his hand. But inside, his heart was fire. These men have forgotten the people, he thought. They wear suits while our people sleep without food. They laugh while our villages burn. Still, he stayed silent. Let them talk, he thought. Then it was his turn to speak. He stood slowly. He did not smile. He looked at every president in the room. He spoke softly but clearly. "I did not come here to fight. I came here to remind you. Our people are dying. Terrorists are burning our homes. Foreign armies are walking on our soil. We asked for help, and you gave us silence." No one moved. He continued. "Yes, I am young. But what is age when your people are hungry? What is age when girls cannot go to school? What is age when mothers bury their children?" He paused. "You say you are fathers. But true fathers protect. True fathers feed. True fathers don't bow to foreign powers while their children cry." A few gasped. One man stood up. He said, "We must follow democracy." Traoré answered, "What is democracy without safety? Without land? Without food? Is democracy only papers and speeches?" Silence again. Then came the words no one expected. "You can threaten us. You can call us boys. But we are not afraid. If war comes, we will fight. Not for power. For our people." Then he said, "We will not bow. We will build." And with that, he sat down. The room stayed quiet for a long time. Even Tinubu didn't speak again. Cameras recorded everything. The video spread like fire on social media. Across Africa, young people watched it. Over and over again. Some cried. Some stood up from their chairs and clapped alone in their rooms. Some shouted, "That is our voice. That is our lion." From that moment, many began to call him something new. The Lion of the Sahel. Not because he was loud, but because he spoke the truth. And he was not afraid. Before he stood in that cold room of presidents, before the world called him the Lion, Ibrahim Traoré was just a boy. He was born in a small village in the west of Burkina Faso. His family was poor. They had no cars, no computers, no rich friends. But they had something more powerful: hope and courage. Every morning, little Ibrahim walked miles to school. The sun was hot. Sometimes, he had no shoes. Sometimes, his belly made noises because he was hungry. But he kept walking. In school, he was quiet. He didn't fight. He didn't play much. But he always listened. He learned fast. He asked questions others were too scared to ask. Why is our land dry? Why do foreign companies take our gold but leave us poor? Why are we still suffering after all these years of independence? His teachers said, "This boy is different." He grew up watching his people struggle. Farmers worked hard, but their crops failed. Mothers cried in hospitals with no medicine. Men walked to the city looking for jobs and came back with empty hands. He saw young girls forced into marriage. He saw soldiers come to villages, not to help, but to scare. And slowly, a fire grew in him. When he turned 18, he made a decision. I will join the army. Not to gain power, but to protect. He wanted to fight for the people who had no voice. The farmers, the children, the tired mothers. His family cried when he left. But they were proud. He went to the military academy. It was tough. He woke up before the sun. Ran long distances. Learned how to fight, how to lead, how to survive. But he also studied books, history, politics, and war. He read about Thomas Sankara, the brave leader who once led Burkina Faso with love, truth, and justice. Traoré loved Sankara's words. You cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness. Those words stayed in his heart. As years passed, Traoré moved up in the army. He became a captain. But he still lived simply. No big house. No loud lifestyle. His fellow soldiers respected him. Not because he shouted orders, but because he walked with them. He ate with them. He stood beside them in battle. Then came the chaos. By the time he was a captain, Burkina Faso was in deep trouble. Terrorists attacked villages almost every week. Schools were closed. Roads were not safe. Even the army was tired. Foreign armies came. They said they would help. But things got worse. Many soldiers died. Many people fled their homes. Food prices went up. Fear was everywhere. The people cried to the government. But the leaders wore suits and gave speeches. No action. No change. Just words. Traoré saw it all. He went on missions to save villages. He saw burned homes. He saw crying children. He saw soldiers bleeding in the sand. And one day, after returning from a very bad mission, he sat in silence and made another decision. We can't wait anymore. He met with other young officers. Brave men who had seen the same pain. They talked at night. In hidden places. Whispering about a plan. Not for power. But for protection. They didn't want to destroy the country. They wanted to save it. The day everything changed. It was the morning of September 30, 2022. A message came over the TV. The president had been removed. Soldiers had taken over. And the new man in charge? Captain Ibrahim Traoré. People were shocked. Some were scared. Many were hopeful. Was this the beginning of something worse? Or something better? Traoré came on TV. No smile. No big promises. He said, "The situation in our country is serious. We can't keep losing our land. We can't keep crying at funerals. We must act now." He said he would not be in power forever. He just wanted to help his people survive. He did not move into the palace. He stayed in the army camp. He did not ask for big cars. He drove a regular truck. He walked in the villages, sat with old women, talked to farmers, hugged children. Slowly, people began to believe him. They said he was too young. Other leaders said, "He is too young. He is just a soldier. He doesn't understand power." But Traoré didn't care. He understood pain. He understood struggle. And most of all, he understood Africa. He started making bold decisions. He removed French military bases. He told Western powers to respect Burkina Faso's independence. He brought back focus on local farming and energy. He stood beside Mali and Niger to form a new union called the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. To some, he was dangerous. To many, he was the light they had been waiting for. And as he grew in strength, the pressure from outside also grew. Ecowas, the group of West African states, started watching him closely. They were not happy. Neither was Nigeria. And soon came the day of humiliation. The day Tinubu spoke. The day Traoré answered. And Africa listened. Ecowas means Economic Community of West African States. It started many years ago. Its job was to bring West African countries together, to help with trade, peace, and unity. But over time, something changed. Many people began to say, Ecowas no longer works for the people. It works for foreign powers. Some said Ecowas leaders listened more to Europe and America than to their own people. Some felt Ecowas had become a club for presidents who wanted to keep their power for a long time. So when the people of Mali, Guinea, Burkina Faso, and later Niger began to remove their presidents and bring in soldiers to take charge, Ecowas got scared. They said, "This is wrong. This is dangerous. It will bring war." But they didn't ask, why did the people rise? They didn't ask, why are the people angry? They didn't ask, what made soldiers like Traoré risk their lives to take over? They only said, "This is illegal. You must return power to civilians." But what was happening on the ground? In Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, people were tired. Tired of corrupt leaders. Tired of broken promises. Tired of begging for help and getting silence. In all three countries, terrorists were attacking. People were dying. Schools were closing. Food was missing. Jobs were gone. Foreign troops came, but the situation only got worse. The people asked, are they here to help or to protect their own interests? When new military leaders came, many people celebrated. They danced in the streets. They waved flags. They held pictures of the young captains and called them saviors. This celebration scared Ecowas. Because if people in one country were happy with new leaders, others might copy. And some presidents in West Africa had stayed in power for 10, 20, or even 30 years. They didn't want to lose control. The Ecowas threats begin. When Niger's new military leader took power in 2023, Ecowas said, enough. They gave Niger 7 days to return the old president or face war. That was the first time Ecowas threatened to use guns against one of their own. But something new happened. Mali and Burkina Faso said no. They stood beside Niger. Ibrahim Traoré gave a clear warning. If you attack Niger, you are attacking us. We will defend them. This made Ecowas angrier. But it also made them nervous. How could 3 countries so poor, so small, stand so strong? What were they really afraid of? Not guns. Not tanks. Not uniforms. They were afraid of one thing, a new idea. And that idea was this. Africa can rise without help from outside. Traoré and the other leaders said, no to French military bases. No to foreign control of gold and uranium. No to fake democracy that only helps the rich. Yes to African unity. Yes to dignity. Yes to self-respect. This idea was spreading fast. Young Africans from Senegal to Congo began saying, we want a Traoré too. Old systems were shaking. Foreign governments were watching with worry. They started saying, "These military leaders are dangerous." But to the people, they were hope. The birth of us. Instead of begging Ecowas to stay, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso formed their own group. The Alliance of Sahel States, AES. They said, "We will work together. Share armies. Share ideas. Protect each other." It was small, but powerful. It was the first sign that a new Africa was possible. One that didn't wait for Europe. One that didn't fear America. One that listened to its own people. Traoré said, "If we don't unite now, we will disappear one by one." The Ecowas meeting. All this led to that big meeting, where Tinubu stood, where Traoré was insulted, where the whole world was watching. And when Traoré replied with calm, power, and truth, Ecowas saw their fear come true. Because he didn't shout. He didn't beg. He simply said, "We are ready." And across Africa, the idea grew stronger. People saw that courage didn't come from age, from money, or from foreign help. It came from truth. And truth was on Traoré's side. After the Ecowas meeting where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu insulted Ibrahim Traoré, something began to change in the air. It was not just words anymore. It was tension. Heavy tension. You could feel it in the streets of Burkina Faso. You could hear it in the voices of young people in Niger. You could see it on the faces of soldiers in Mali. Everyone was asking the same question. Is Ecowas really going to attack? Because Tinubu did not stop after the meeting. He spoke again. This time, in front of his people in Nigeria. He said, "We must show that coups will not be accepted. We are ready to take all necessary actions. Military action is on the table." These words were loud. Some clapped. Some were quiet. Some whispered. Why is Tinubu talking like he is the master of Africa? In the newspapers, in the newsrooms, on radios across Africa, it became the top story. Nigeria leads Ecowas to prepare military intervention against Niger. The generals gather. At the same time, Ecowas gathered military chiefs. They came from Ghana, Senegal, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, and others. They didn't come with pens. They came with maps. They came with plans. They talked about airstrikes. About sending ground troops. About how to remove the new leader of Niger by force. And at the center of all this was Tinubu. He was the new chairman of Ecowas. And he wanted to send a strong message to the military governments in the Sahel. But that message also had danger. Because when one African country threatens war on another, the world watches. And behind the curtain, foreign hands were clapping. Some in Europe smiled quietly. Some in America sent emails of support. And France was very, very interested. But something happened next. When the military plan was announced, something strange happened. The people of Nigeria began to protest. Yes, the people of Tinubu's own country. In the streets of Kano, Kaduna, and Lagos, young Nigerians shouted, "No war in Niger. This is not our fight. Fix Nigeria first." Why? Because in Nigeria, fuel prices were high. Hunger was rising. Kidnapping and violence were growing. People were struggling. So when Tinubu talked about spending millions to attack another country, people were angry. They said, "We are dying at home, and you want to send soldiers abroad." Even some senators and governors spoke out. One said, "This is not what Ecowas was made for. We should be solving problems, not starting wars." The Sahel states reply. Then came the response from the three military governments, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. They didn't write long speeches. They didn't hold back. They said clearly, if Ecowas attacks Niger, it is war against us all. They sent fighter planes to Niger. They moved troops. They put their armies on high alert. They were ready. And in Burkina Faso, Traoré spoke again. This time, with fire in his eyes. He said, "We are not slaves. We are not children. We are Africans. If you raise your sword against our brother, you raise it against us. And we will not stand aside. He spoke to the people. He said, they may have bigger weapons, but we have bigger hearts. We know this land. We will defend it with our souls. Across villages, cities, and towns, the people began preparing, not for fear, but for defense. Mothers cooked extra food for soldiers. Young men lined up to join the army. Artists painted pictures of unity. Musicians made songs of resistance. The world holds its breath. People across the world waited. Would war come? Would Nigeria send bombs? Would Ecowas cross the red line? Nobody knew. But what they did know was this. Traoré was not afraid. Even if war came. Even if Ecowas brought everything they had. He stood with his people. He stood with Niger. He stood with truth. And in doing so, he showed Africa something powerful. We are not weak. We are not children. We are the children of Sankara, of Lumumba, of Nkrumah. And we are not afraid to stand tall. After the threats from Ecowas. After Tinubu's strong words. After the world held its breath. Ibrahim Traoré stayed calm. He didn't run. He didn't hide. He didn't rush to the cameras. He walked among his soldiers. He spoke softly to his people. He moved like a lion, but a silent one. A young leader under fire. Many said, he is just a boy. He will break under pressure. But Traoré did not break. Instead, he grew stronger. His eyes became sharper. His voice became clearer. His decisions became faster. He knew one mistake could cost everything, his people's trust, their land, their lives. So he kept moving with care. He called his generals. He said, prepare the army, but do not fire first. He called the youth. He said, train your minds, not just your hands. He called the elders. He said, guide me with your wisdom. This land belongs to all of us. Traoré's new mission. Traoré knew that war might still come. But he also knew something more powerful than war, vision. So while others talked about bullets, Traoré talked about building. He sent trucks to villages that had been forgotten. He reopened schools in areas once closed by fear. He sent engineers to fix roads, water pumps, and power lines. He brought back local farming groups. He told his ministers, we don't have time for suits and speeches. Go to the ground. Touch the soil. Listen to the people. The people started seeing something new. Soldiers building schools. Young leaders sleeping in tents with villagers. Army trucks carrying food, not just guns. People said, this is the first time our leaders are living like us. The truth about the gold. Then Traoré did something bold. He opened the books. He showed the world where Burkina Faso's gold was going. Big companies from Europe were taking gold worth millions. But the villages near the mines were still poor. He said, enough. This gold is for our people. He cancelled some mining deals. He called for Burkina ownership. Some foreign companies got angry. They said, this is bad for business. Traoré said, let it be bad for business. It must be good for the people. That made many powerful groups nervous. They tried to scare him. They said, you'll lose support. But he answered, I am not here to be liked. I am here to serve. Young Africa was watching. In Senegal, in Togo, in DR Congo, in Cameroon. Young Africans began sharing his videos. They posted his quotes. They wore t-shirts with his face. They called him Africa's real voice. The people's soldier. The son of Sankara. And slowly, a movement was rising, not just in Burkina Faso, but across the continent. It wasn't about one man. It was about freedom, justice, respect. And Traoré became the symbol. Inside Nigeria. Meanwhile, inside Nigeria, Tinubu faced trouble. Prices were going up. Anger was rising. His threats against Niger, against Traoré, no longer sounded powerful, they sounded distant. People asked, "Why are we fighting our brothers while we suffer here?" Even some old generals whispered, "Maybe this young man Traoré is not our enemy. Maybe he is our mirror." Traoré's message to Africa. Then one day, Traoré stood in front of a simple microphone. No red carpet. No big flags. Just him and his truth. He said, "They tried to divide us with borders. They tried to silence us with loans. But we are still here. And we are still African." He looked straight into the camera. To the youth across Africa, this is your time. Don't wait for permission. Rise. Organize. Learn. Build. We are not the children of weakness. We are the children of warriors. His voice was not loud, but it was felt. From Cape Town to Cairo. And Ecowas stepped back. Maybe it was the protests. Maybe it was the pressure. Maybe it was the silent fire of Traoré. But something changed. Ecowas stepped back. The threats grew quiet. The talk of war faded. And for the first time, the world saw that truth could bend power. Not by shouting. Not by fear. But by standing firm. Like a lion in the storm. Traoré stood on the red soil of his country. He looked out at the mountains and rivers. He listened to the voices of farmers, traders, soldiers, mothers, children. He heard one thing in their words. We want a new Africa. Not a fake one made by speeches. Not a weak one begging for loans. But a strong, real, clean Africa. And Traoré believed that was possible. Africa must work together. He said, "Africa is not poor. It has gold, oil, diamonds, land, people, brains. But Africa is divided." So he started visiting leaders. Not the usual ones. Not those who loved money more than people. He visited Mali, Guinea, Niger. He spoke to young leaders who understood the pain of the people. And together, they asked, "What if we stopped asking for help, and started helping each other?" This idea became a plan. The plan became a dream. And the dream became something bigger than them all. The AES begins to build. AES stands for Alliance of Sahel States. It started with 3 countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. But it was more than a name. It was a promise. A promise to share soldiers, share food, share schools, share ideas. Traoré said, "We will plant what we eat. We will build what we live in. We will heal our sick. We will defend our land." The first big step? A joint army. Soldiers from 3 countries trained together. They didn't ask who was from where. They called each other brother. They wore one badge, AS. And people began to feel safe again. Power without fear. Many thought AES would fail. That it would break like other African unions. But it didn't. Because it was built from pain. From truth. From the ground, not from air-conditioned offices. Traoré told his men, "If one village is attacked, it is all our villages. If one woman is hungry, it is all our mothers. We are one." And they believed him. Cutting the chains. Then came a harder step. The financial chains. The 3 countries decided to leave the CFA franc. This was a currency tied to France. Many said, "This is suicide. The economy will crash." But Traoré said, "We can't be free with someone else's money in our pockets." So they began working on a new currency, made in Africa, for Africa. They met with bankers, farmers, small shopkeepers. They asked, "What does money mean to you?" They listened. They learned. And slowly, a new system began to grow. The dream of a united Africa. Traoré wasn't just thinking of AES. He was thinking of all 54 African countries. He imagined one passport, one army, one flag, one Africa. He called on leaders across the continent. Some came. Some laughed. Some said, he is too young. But the people listened. From Kenya to Gambia, young Africans started to say, why not? Why can't we dream big? Schools of the future. Traoré also looked at education. He said, why do our schools teach us more about France than Burkina Faso? He brought in teachers. He asked them, what can we teach that gives power to the people? So they began to change the system. New lessons on African history, farming, engineering, unity, defense. No more lies about Africa being weak. Children now said, I want to be a builder of my land. Not just a worker for foreign companies. The women rise too. Traoré also knew that mothers hold the world. He said, if we leave our women behind, we leave half of Africa behind. So he opened centers for women. Places where they could learn to read, learn to lead, start businesses. He gave land to women farmers. He gave microphones to women leaders. And they rose. One woman in a village said, before, we were told to be quiet. Now, we are told to speak. Traoré gave us back our voices. Unity through suffering. Not everything was easy. They still lacked machines. Still lacked medicine. Still lacked power in many areas. But Traoré told the people, yes, it is hard. But this pain is honest pain. It is not the pain of slavery. It is the pain of building. And they understood. Better to suffer building your own house, than to sleep well in a house owned by your master. What the West feared most. It was not war. It was not guns. It was not even the new currency. What they feared most was this. The people were waking up. And once a mind wakes up, it cannot sleep again. Traoré didn't just shake governments. He shook the people. He helped them believe. And that belief was spreading like fire in dry grass. The sun was rising in Burkina Faso. Children were walking to school with hope. Farmers were singing as they worked their land. Soldiers were training in the morning light. But not everyone was smiling. Some people in the shadows were angry. They didn't like what Ibrahim Traoré was doing. They didn't like that. He kicked out foreign soldiers. He ended unfair gold deals. He united poor African countries. He spoke the truth with no fear. They felt threatened. And when power feels threatened, it begins to plan. Whispers in expensive offices. Far away from Burkina Faso, across the oceans, in big cities with tall glass buildings, powerful men held secret meetings. They wore suits. They drank coffee. They looked at maps. They said, this young soldier is dangerous. He is turning people against us. He must be stopped. But they didn't want to do it in the open. No. They wanted it to look natural. They wanted him to fall from the inside. So they chose a different weapon, betrayal. The enemy within. Some people inside Burkina Faso were not loyal. They smiled at Traoré in the day. But at night, they sent messages. They took money. They met in dark rooms. They made plans. They said, let us remove him quietly. Let us create a crisis. Let us make the people doubt him. Traoré's friends warned him. They said, brother, there are snakes near your feet. But Traoré answered, I know. Let them come. I have nothing to hide. The poison of lies. The first attack was not with guns. It was with words. Suddenly, social media was full of strange news. They said, Traoré is stealing money. Traoré is planning to become a dictator. The AES is just a trick. They made fake videos. They paid people to spread doubt. They tried to turn the people against him. It worked on some. But most people had seen too much truth to believe the lies. They said, Traoré eats with us. He walks with us. He sleeps among us. We trust what we see with our eyes. The coup that almost happened. One night, Traoré was meeting with young officers. Suddenly, a call came in. A soldier whispered in his ear. There is movement at the base. Some troops have left without orders. Someone is trying to take the palace. Traoré stood up. He didn't shout. He didn't panic. He looked at the officers and said, "Come with me." They left the room. They drove to the base. When they arrived, they found a group of armed men trying to change the command. But they were shocked when they saw Traoré step out of the car. Face to face. Calm. Brave. Unarmed. He walked straight to them and said, "If you want power, take it now. But look me in the eye, like a man." There was silence. The men dropped their eyes. One dropped his weapon. The others followed. Traoré said nothing more. He turned and walked away. The message that shook Africa. The next day, the news spread fast. Attempted coup in Burkina Faso fails. But what people remembered most was not the danger. They remembered Traoré's words. Power is not something you take by hiding in the dark. It is something you earn in the light. And all across Africa, people began to speak again. This man is not normal. He is not like other leaders. He leads by truth, not fear. The truth about enemies. Later, one of the coup plotters was caught. He was crying. He said, "They promised me money. They told me you were evil." Traoré looked at him and said, "Did you believe them?" The man nodded. "Then now, believe your own eyes." And Traoré let him go. He didn't jail him. He didn't kill him. He said, "If we kill everyone who is fooled, who will remain to learn?" That moment touched many. Even his enemies were shocked. Even shadows fear the light. The people who planned from far away watched everything. They said, "This man is harder to break than we thought." And one of them said, "Maybe we should have stopped him when he was still unknown." But it was too late. Traoré's truth was out. It had entered the hearts of millions. You can fight guns. You can block money. But you cannot stop an idea whose time has come. The wind was dry in the Sahel. The sun beat hard on the sand. But something was rising that was stronger than the heat. Hope. Hope was rising across 3 countries. Burkina Faso, led by Ibrahim Traoré. Mali, led by Assimi Goïta. Niger, led by Abdurrahmane Tiani. People started calling them the 3 sons of Africa. They were young. They were bold. They were soldiers. But most of all, they were truthful. They had come from the same soil. They had walked the same streets as the poor. And now, they stood together like brothers. The meeting in Niamey. It was early morning in Niamey, the capital of Niger. Traoré arrived in a small plane. No luxury. No big welcome. Just a simple handshake from Tiani. Later, Goïta arrived from Mali. They hugged. They smiled. Then they entered a small room, closed the door, and talked like brothers. No translators. No foreign guests. Just them and Africa. They spoke for hours. They said things the world was not ready to hear. They asked, "Why do we need outsiders to guard our homes? Why do we fight each other while the rich take our gold? Why is it easier to fly to Paris than to visit another African country?" They decided something big. Let us unite like never before. The Sahel Federation is born. From that meeting, a new idea was born. Not just an alliance. Not just a friendship. But a real federation. A plan to share laws. Share borders. Share education. Share trade. Share one dream. They called it the Sahel Confederation. They said, "We are not waiting for the African Union. We will start with 3. Then others will join." And people in their countries began to cheer. Yes. This is the Africa we want. Simple things that changed lives. The first changes were small, but powerful. You could now travel from Burkina to Mali with just one ID. Farmers could sell goods across borders with no taxes. Students could study in any of the 3 countries and pay the same fee. These were small actions, but they touched millions of lives. One driver said, "Before, I had to pay bribes at every border. Now I drive free like a king." One mother said, "My daughter is in university in Mali. It's cheaper now. I am proud." One soldier said, "I train with Malians and Nigerians. We feel like one army now." Not everyone was happy. Some powerful leaders in Africa didn't like this. They felt small when they saw what these 3 men were doing. They said, "They are trying to break Ecowas. They are dangerous." But the people replied, "We are not breaking anything. We are building what was never built." Western powers were also worried. They said, "This new group may bring Russia and China into the region." But Traoré said, "We are not East or West. We are Africa." 3 voices, 1 song. When the 3 leaders spoke on TV, people listened. They didn't talk like politicians. They talked like sons of the land. Goita spoke slowly. Tiani spoke firmly. Traoré spoke with fire. But their message was the same. We will rise together, or we will fall divided. People who had never cared about politics began to care. Youth started forming groups to support the Sahel dream. Singers made songs about unity. Artists painted murals of the 3 leaders standing as one. And everywhere, one chant grew louder: "Africa for Africans." The meeting with the people. One day, the 3 leaders held a public meeting. They sat on plastic chairs, under trees, in a dusty field. People from all walks of life came. Farmers, soldiers, traders, old women with wisdom, youth with energy. Everyone spoke. Everyone was heard. No guards pushed the people back. No microphones filtered their voices. And when it was Traoré's turn to speak, he said, "This is not our federation. It is yours. You are the owners. We are the workers." The people stood and clapped. Some cried. One old man shouted, "This is the Africa Thomas Sankara died for." The dream begins to spread. Soon, other countries began to ask questions. Chad asked, "Can we join?" Guinea asked, "Can we study your system?" Even people in Nigeria whispered, "Why are we not doing this?" And so, the Sahel dream was no longer just a dream. It was becoming a fire that moved from one country to the next. The wind was heavy in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. Inside a tall government building, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu sat in his chair. He looked at a report in his hands. It was about the Sahel Confederation. It showed how Traoré, Goita, and Tiani were changing West Africa. It showed how millions were cheering them. It showed how Nigeria's people, especially the youth, were beginning to ask, "Why can't we be free too?" Tinubu's face was hard. He slammed the paper on the table. He said, "They think they can rise without us." Fear in high places. Tinubu called a meeting. Many men in suits came. They sat quietly. Tinubu asked them, "Do you not see the fire they are lighting? If we do nothing, the people will compare us. They will ask us why we are not like Traoré." One man said, "Maybe we can speak to them." Tinubu shook his head. "They don't want talks. They want change. And change is dangerous to us." So they planned a new strategy. Not with guns. Not with speeches. But with pressure. The Ecowas weapon. Tinubu was the chairman of Ecowas at the time. Ecowas is a group of West African countries. He used it like a weapon. He gathered other leaders and said, "These military governments must return power to civilians." But the people saw through it. They said, "Why now? Where was Ecowas when civilians were stealing for years?" Still, Tinubu pushed harder. He said, "If Traoré and the others don't return power, we will place sanctions." And they did. They closed borders. They froze bank accounts. They cut off trade. But something strange happened. Traoré stood before his people and said, "Let them close their borders. We will open our hearts to each other." And the people clapped. Tiani said, "Let them freeze their banks. We will build our own." And the people cheered. Goita said, "Let them isolate us. But we are not alone. We have each other." And the people shouted with joy. So, instead of breaking the Sahel countries, the sanctions made them stronger. They helped each other more. They traded among themselves. They used their own money. They built new systems. The moment that shocked Nigeria. Then came the most powerful moment. Traoré was giving a speech in front of thousands in Ouagadougou. He looked into the camera and said, "President Tinubu, you are our elder. But why do you hurt your own children? We did not rise to insult you. We rose to save our people. You should be proud that Africa is standing, not trying to knock it down. But if you want to fight, know this, we will not kneel." That video went viral. It flew across phones in Nigeria. Young Nigerians shared it, saying, "He said what we feel. Why is our president afraid of freedom?" A storm inside Nigeria. Tinubu's advisors warned him. One said, "The youth are restless." Another said, "Traoré is more loved here than our own leaders." Tinubu said nothing. He was silent. But inside, he was burning. Nigeria's youth begin to rise. In the cities of Nigeria, Lagos, Kano, Port Harcourt, young people started holding small meetings. They watched Traoré's speeches. They discussed the Sahel Confederation. They asked, "Why are we the giants of Africa, yet we are always on our knees? Why do we have oil, gold, brains, but still suffer? Why can't we follow the Sahel path?" One day, a group of students made a sign. "Tinubu fears Traoré more than terrorists." It made people laugh. But it also made people think. The words that touched the world. Later, Traoré was asked by a foreign journalist, "What if Nigeria becomes your enemy?" He smiled and said, "Nigeria is not Tinubu. Nigeria is the people. And the people are my brothers and sisters. One day, we will all rise together. Maybe not today. But one day." Those words reached deep into hearts. Even some Nigerian soldiers said, "This man is not our enemy. He speaks with truth." The power of truth. Tinubu tried everything. Sanctions. Warnings. Media attacks. But nothing stopped the people from believing in the Sahel dream. Because truth is like light. You can cover it for a while. But one small hole, and it shines through. It was a hot morning in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. The streets were busy. Motorbikes moved fast. Children ran to school. Traders opened shops. But by midday, everything stopped. People turned off their radios. They closed their shops. They left their work. They all gathered in front of TVs, phones, and radios. Even farmers in the fields stopped and listened. Why? Because something big was about to happen. Traoré, Goita, and Tiani were going to make a joint announcement. It was not just for Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. It was for the whole of Africa. And nobody knew exactly what they would say. 3 flags, 1 table. The broadcast started. 3 simple chairs. 3 flags. 3 leaders. No luxury. No gold. Just truth. Goita spoke first. "We come here not as presidents, but as sons of Africa." Tiani spoke next. For too long, Africa was silent. Now, we must speak. Then Traoré spoke. "This is a new chapter. We will write it together. And we will not ask for permission." The people across the continent leaned closer. The declaration. Together, the 3 leaders made this announcement. "Today, we declare the full independence of our lands, not just from foreign control, but from mental slavery. We will not send our gold and uranium away while our people sleep hungry. We will build a single Sahel army. We will start using our own currency, backed by our resources. We invite all African nations who believe in dignity to join us. Silence followed. Then applause. Then shouts. Then tears. From Senegal to Somalia, from Congo to Cameroon, people screamed, "Yes! This is the Africa we want." Reactions around the world. In Europe, leaders called emergency meetings. They said, "This is dangerous. Our companies have big contracts there." In America, news stations called it a radical move. In China, they simply said, "Africa is waking up." But in the hearts of ordinary people, something moved. A young man in Ghana said, "If they succeed, we all will be free." A woman in South Africa said, "These leaders speak like Mandela once did." Even in Nigeria, people said, "We want leaders like them, not ones who fear freedom." Voices from the ground. In a small village in Niger, an old man stood by a radio. He said, "I never thought I'd live to see this day." In a market in Mali, a mother hugged her child and whispered, "Maybe your future will be better than mine." In a school in Burkina Faso, a teacher wrote on the board, "Freedom is when you make your own choices." Enemies try again. But not everyone was happy. Some rich men lost control of gold mines. Some companies lost oil deals. Some soldiers in other countries were ordered to prepare. There was talk of war. Talk of invasion. Talk of stopping the Sahel dream. But Traoré replied, "We have no weapons to match theirs. But we have something stronger, the people." And across cities, villages, mountains, and deserts, the people rose. The African shield. Volunteers trained with soldiers. Mothers cooked food for fighters. Artists drew posters of freedom. Youth spread news on phones. Farmers donated food for free. Even people who once doubted now said, "We will defend this dream with our lives." It was no longer just about Traoré, or Goita, or Tiani. It was about Africa itself. Africa stood like a shield made of millions of hearts. And the world began to fear, not their guns, but their unity. The fire cannot be put out. One journalist from France came to Ouagadougou. She asked Traoré, "Are you not afraid of being attacked?" He smiled and said, "I may fall, but the idea will not. You cannot kill a fire that is inside the hearts of millions." And people across the world repeated that sentence. You cannot kill a fire that is inside the hearts of millions. Africa's new song. In the evening, people sang in the streets. Drums were beaten. Flags were waved. Children danced. And over everything, one song was heard, in different languages but with the same meaning. Africa is no longer begging. Africa is building. It was the day the continent paused. The day it stood still. Not out of fear, but out of hope. After the great announcement, things felt peaceful. People were smiling. Soldiers were training. Schools were opening. Farmers were planting more crops than ever before. Hope was alive. But in the shadows, something dark was growing. Not from outside Africa, but from inside. From men who wore African clothes, spoke African languages, but served foreign masters. The whispering men. In every country, there are men who fear change. They fear it because they lose power. They fear it because they no longer control others. And these men began to whisper. They whispered in government buildings. They whispered in army bases. They whispered in foreign embassies. One of them said, "We cannot allow this Traoré to finish what Sankara started." Another said, "If this new Africa lives, our business dies." So they made secret phone calls. They met in quiet places. They said, "We must break this from the inside." Money to break Africa. Soon, money began to flow. Dirty money. It came from old powerful hands in Europe and beyond. It entered banks quietly. It was given to media houses to spread lies. It was given to soldiers to betray their own. It was given to politicians to act like friends, but stab in secret. And the worst thing? Some of these traitors were once close to Traoré. Traoré's eyes open. Traoré sat in his small office, reading reports. He saw that fuel trucks were being delayed. He heard false news spreading on the radio. He noticed army supplies going missing. At first, he was calm. But then his intelligence chief came with a report. It said, "Some men in your circle are meeting with outsiders. They are planning to create chaos." Traoré did not shout. He did not cry. He only said, "So, the war has come inside." The night of the coup attempt. It was 2 a.m. Dark and quiet. But in one army camp near Ouagadougou, strange things were happening. Soldiers who had trained under Traoré were now pointing guns at their own brothers. A small group tried to storm the presidential base. Their plan? To remove Traoré by force. To call it a correction. To end the Sahel Confederation before it grew bigger. But they didn't know. The people were watching. The people defend their leader. As the gunfire started, men and women rushed to the streets. They stood in front of army trucks. They blocked the roads with their bodies. They said, "If you want Traoré, you must go through us." The soldiers got scared. They saw old women not afraid. They saw young boys standing like lions. And they dropped their weapons. The coup failed. The betrayal was stopped. By the people. Traoré speaks to the nation. The next morning, Traoré appeared on TV. His face was calm, but firm. He looked straight at the camera and said, "Yes, there was betrayal. Some of my own brothers tried to sell us. But they forgot one thing: you can betray a man, but you can't betray a people who are awake." He paused and said, "This is not just about me. It's about you. If I fall, another must rise. If we all fall, then Africa sleeps again. So stay awake. Guard the dream. Protect each other." The purge begins. After the failed coup, Traoré did not hide the truth. He removed those close to him who had secret ties to foreign powers. He closed banks that were used to bribe soldiers. He told the people, "From now on, no more masks. If you are with the people, stay. If you are with the enemy, leave." Many fled the country that week. But many more stood up and said, "We are ready to protect this dream, even with our lives." One voice rises. In Mali and Niger, people heard what happened. They feared the same thing might happen there. So they too stood up. Tiani and Goita removed the spies from their teams. They cleaned their houses. They united their armies. And soon, they spoke with one voice again. "We are one Africa. We do not kneel to money. We kneel only to truth." Africa watches closely. Now, all of Africa was watching. They had seen outside attacks. But now they had seen inside betrayal. And yet, the Sahel Confederation still stood. Still united. Still bold. Because it was no longer built on guns or leaders. It was built on the hearts of the people. And that cannot be broken. It was a quiet morning in Burkina Faso. The sky was clear. The sun touched the land softly. Ibrahim Traoré stood alone in a small garden. He looked at a statue of Thomas Sankara. It was not tall. Not made of gold. Just strong and simple, like the man it honored. Traoré placed his hand on the cold metal. He whispered, "We are still walking your road, comrade. But now, millions walk it with me." The spirit of Sankara lives. Long ago, Sankara had said, "We must dare to invent the future." He dreamed of Africa that stood proud. Africa that fed its people. Africa that refused to beg. He was killed for that dream. But dreams do not die. They wait. They wait for the right people. The right time. And now, the dream had returned, in the voices of Traoré, Goita, and Tiani. But even more. It returned in the hearts of ordinary people. The power of the people. Africa's real power was never in palaces. Never in foreign aid. Never in speeches. It was always in the people. In the farmer who feeds the village. In the teacher who opens young minds. In the mother who teaches her child to love the land. In the soldier who defends not politicians, but the poor. This was the real Africa. And now it was awake. One continent. One destiny. The Sahel Confederation was growing. Other countries began to show interest. Guinea, Togo, Chad, even far countries in East and Central Africa started asking questions. Leaders came quietly to visit Traoré, not with pride, but with respect. One leader said, "You have done what we only talked about." Another said, "Our people want what your people have, a voice." It was no longer just a group of nations. It was becoming a movement. The youth carry the flame. Young Africans were no longer waiting for jobs. They were building farms, starting schools, forming security teams, creating music and art that spoke of unity and freedom. One student in Senegal wrote, "We were sleeping, but Traoré shook us. Now we are running." Another in Congo said, "Our flags are different, but our pain is the same. And now our fight is the same." And from everywhere, the cry rose. Africa must stand. Africa must unite. Africa must lead itself. Tinubu's silence. In Nigeria, Tinubu had become quiet. He had tried shame. He had tried pressure. He had tried betrayal. But none of it worked. The people were not listening to him anymore. They were watching the Sahel, following Traoré, and even some of his own men were now whispering, "Perhaps it's time we change too." And that was the greatest shock of all. Not a war, not a fight, but the truth moving across hearts. The final speech. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the Sahel Confederation, Traoré gave a speech in a dusty village, not a big city. Thousands came. Millions watched. He said, "We are not perfect. We still have struggles. But we are no longer afraid. We may not have all the tools. But we have each other. Africa is not poor. It was only broken. But now, it is healing. We are not rising for power. We are rising to serve." And we invite every African, young or old, rich or poor, to rise with us. Conclusion. The rising flame. And so, the story does not end. Because it is still being written. Every farm built. Every lie exposed. Every young voice that speaks truth adds another page. The Sahel dream lives not in Traoré alone, but in the fire inside each African who says, "Enough is enough." We will build what was broken. We will carry Sankara's shadow into the sun. And that fire, no matter what happens, can never be put out.